Alone in silence, I regained my hearing after 20 years kept it a secret here sy. The day had dawned with an eerie stillness that felt like a prelude to something monumental. Sarah, a woman who had lived 2 decades adrift in silence, stood in the middle of her cluttered living room, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked at the box sitting on her coffee table. It glimmered under the soft morning light like a treasure trove of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Today, she would open it, and her life would change forever. For 20 years, she had been alone in her world, silently watching laughter dance across faces, eyes spark with joy, and conversations fade into the void. A stark contrast to the cacophony she had missed: the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the laughter of children. But now, the impossible was about to happen. As she reached for the box, a chill ran down her spine. The memories of the day her world turned dark flooded back: a car accident, the screeching tires, the blinding headlights. One moment she was whole, the next, the world slipped away. But this wasn't just a reunion with sound, it was a reclamation of her lost self. She could hardly breathe as she unwrapped the contents: a sleek pair of hearing aids that promised to mend the invisible rift between her and reality. But what truly gripped her was the whisper of warning she had heard. Trust no one echoed in her mind, an ominous taunt from her brother who had been her confidant, yet harbored secrets of his own. She hesitated, fingers trembling. Could she really go back? What if the noise, the chaos, overwhelmed her? As if in response, the neighborhood around her began to awaken. Faint sounds trickled through the open window: the low hum of a car engine, a dog barking, distant laughter blending into a symphony of life, and her heart raced with a dangerous blend of hope and fear. Was she ready to face it all, or was she merely painting a target on her back? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. In that moment, Sarah made a decision. She crushed her doubts and placed the hearing aids in her ears, her heart thundering with every second that ticked by. At first, all there was a ringing. Then suddenly explosions of sound flooded her senses. A choir of birds was singing, the wind rustled the trees like travelers sharing stories, and her heart raced. But then, a shout pierced the air, urgent and frantic help. It jolted her like a lightning bolt. The laughter faded, replaced by panic. A cold sweat broke out on her neck. Had she imagined it? What was happening out there? As she raced to the window, she caught a glimpse of chaos unraveling. People were scrambling, their faces wide with terror. What lay ahead for Sarah, now pulled back into the world she had longed for but never truly returned to? She stood there, heart thumping, the thrilling finale just beginning, a tangled mystery beckoning her forward. What would she uncover next? Sarah pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her breath fogging the surface as she surveyed the chaos erupting outside. The once quiet street was now a frenzy of flailing arms, panicked voices, and the unmistakable siren screaming in the distance. Help! It echoed again, slicing through her thoughts, weaving its way into her chest and electrifying her nerves. Every sound around her felt sharp, too much, and she wondered if she had made a mistake, if the world she had longed for would now swallow her whole. A young boy had fallen, his bike crumpled beside him, twisted metal glistening in the sun, reflecting another life, a life without pain. Sarah's heart raced, the urgency in the air wrapping around her like a thick, suffocating fog. She wanted to move, to crash through the door and lend her support, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. Stay calm, she whispered to herself, but the words felt hollow. What could she do? She was just a bystander in a life that had strapped her to decades of stillness. Fear knotted in her stomach like a clenched fist. Call 911. Someone shouted, and she turned her head, catching glimpses of strangers fumbling for their phones, fingers poised, trembling. As they hurried to the boy's side, her instincts kicked in, What if there was more to this than just an accident? A chill tingled down her spine at the memories of her brother's warning. No one is safe, he had said, eyes darting as if every shadow held a threat. Trust no one. Was this chaotic scene a mere accident, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? Just then, her heart sank as she watched a man break through the gathering crowd, his expression wild and pained. "Where are you?" he shouted, his voice mingling with the screams, growing more frantic. As he pushed through the throng, her stomach lurched. She recognized him. It was her brother, Jason. He was here. The man whom she had relied on, but whose words had shaken her resolve. "Jason!" she called, her voice shaky and frightened, unfamiliar to her own ears after years of silence. He spun around, eyes widening as if she had conjured him from the chaos itself. For a split second, time froze, then he turned back to the boy, urgency propelling him forward. "Come on, buddy, hold on," he urged, bending over him as a woman knelt down beside them. They worked together, a perfect duo in the backdrop of turmoil, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their bond was heavier than it appeared. What was he doing here? Why had he chosen this moment, this chaotic, life-altering moment to return? Her heart pounded as the realization hit her hard. This was not an accident, it was a call for help that went deeper than skin and bone. Unsure if she should stay or join him, she felt an invisible thread pulling her toward him. But then a bitter thought sprouted in her mind: if she reached for him, could she really trust what he would say? As paramedics arrived, sirens blaring, she hesitated. The noise intensified, every sound crashing against her, howling chaos there to remind her she was not alone. But alone in what way? Alone with the truth she had kept secret for so long? Did she dare unravel it now? The moment hung heavy in the air, filled with unanswered questions and desperate choices. Just then, one of the paramedics turned, locking eyes with Sarah. Their gaze held a weighty promise, a knowing that made her heart seize. What would she uncover now? With a deep breath, she stepped away from the window, ready to embrace the madness outside. What truths awaited her in the growing storm of sound and revelation? The moment Sarah stepped outside, the overwhelming chaos surged around her like a tide. Sirens wailed, voices screamed, and the air thickened with desperation. Strangers rushed past her, their faces masks of fear, glancing nervously at one another as though they were all potential threats. "Jason!" she called again, her voice swallowed by the roiling mass. Each step toward him felt monumental, as if she were wading through water, thick and unyielding. The boy on the ground screamed in pain, piercing through the noise, and that sound gripped her heart tighter. As she neared, Jason's frantic gestures became clearer. He was trying to hold the boy's arm steady, his brow furrowed with concentration. Meanwhile, the woman at his side, a paramedic, worked vigorously to assess the situation. "Just hold on, we're here," she urged, her voice calm and steady, a lifeline thrown into the tumult. Sarah hesitated. The doctor's confidence triggered something in her, hinting at the chaos that could ensue if she threw herself into the mix. But the boy's cries were a raw nerve, jabbing deep into her. She had to move. "Jason!" Her feet finally responded, her body pushing forward with renewed purpose, as if every moment she'd spent rooted to that window vanished like smoke. Instantly, he looked up, eyes meeting hers with an intensity that caught her breath. "Sarah? Stay back!" he shouted, the edge of panic creeping into his voice. He turned back to the child, oblivious to her presence. The moment shattered something inside her. Why was he so frightened? A sharp instinct propelled her closer. "I can help," she yelled, her voice breaking through the void separating them. "No," he snapped, frustration bleeding through his worry. "You need to. I can hear." The words burst from her lips, raw and shaking from the trembling depths of her desire to connect. A shroud of silence had lifted, and she had reclaimed a piece of herself she thought lost forever. Jason's mouth fell open. For a split second, his focus waned, and the urgency of the moment seemed to recalibrate as realization flickered in his eyes. "What do you mean?" The paramedic paused, casting a concerned look their way. The boy was slipping, His eyes fluttered as if he were disappearing into a void, and time seemed to stretch painfully thin. "I can help," Sarah repeated, louder now, a surge of defiance creeping into her heart. What had kept her silent for so long? Didn't he have to bind her any longer? She took a deep breath, channeling everything, the shame, the fear, into resolve. Her brother's eyes moved from her to the child and back again, uncertainty knotting his brow. "What are you talking about?" "The truth. I can hear, Jason. I can help." In that split second of chaos, the sirens, the screams, the boy's fading breaths, everything felt charged, electric with the weight of what hung unspoken between them. One of the paramedics moved closer to Sarah, evaluating her, searching for signs of competence. "Are you sure?" he asked, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "Trust me." Suddenly, a crash echoed in the distance. The crowd stilled, shadows lengthening, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting to exhale. The atmosphere shifted, shadows darting where none had been a moment before. Sarah's pulse quickened again. What hidden dangers were lurking amidst this chaos? And then, Jason spoke, his voice trembling. "What have you gotten us into, Sarah?" Just as panic flickered in his eyes, the crowd erupted again, people yelling and pulling back in alarm. Sarah turned, and they all stared wide-eyed down the street. A dark figure emerged from the shadows, nearly indistinguishable, yet unmistakable in intent. Fear lanced through her. Who was this, and what did they want? As the figure approached, Sarah's mind raced. What awaited them in this storm was more than just noise. It was a revelation lurking in the darkness, waiting for its chance to surface. What truth would be uncovered as the storm broke? The figure stepped into the dim glow of streetlights, revealing a face twisted in a mask of rage and desperation. A hood obscured their features, but a glint of something metallic dangled from their hands, a knife, reflecting the fractured light. Sarah's heart raced, each beat echoing louder than the chaotic backdrop, as panic surged through her veins like cold fire. "Everyone back," the paramedic shouted. The urgency in his voice sliced through the chaos, but the crowd seemed frozen, shocked into silence as they processed the threat before them. Even the boy on the ground momentarily quieted, eyes bulging in terror, the pain momentarily eclipsed by the looming dread. "Get away from him!" Jason yelled, his voice edged with protectiveness, drawing Sarah's attention back to him. His hands gripped the boy tightly, as if his flesh alone could fend off the danger. She could almost see the bubble of fear coil around him, suffocating, and she knew she had to pull him back from the brink. "Jason, listen," she cried out, her voice stronger now, filled with the urgency of a bond that tied them together more than ever before. "I can help. Just trust me." He hesitated, doubt flickering in his eyes, but the impending threat forced his hand. The air thickened with brutality as the figure advanced, shadows gathering behind them like dark whispers. Sarah felt a weight settle on her chest, pushing down until she could scarcely breathe. "Sarah, don't." He reached out as if to pull her back into safety, but the moment stretched, a tenuous thread ready to snap. The paramedic moved in, trying to shield the boy from view, but it was futile. The enraged figure was fixated, eyes narrowed like a predator on prey. "You don't know what you're doing, lady," they shouted, voice thick with venom, echoing off the walls of nearby buildings. And that heartbeat of hesitation, Sarah took a step forward. The concrete beneath her feet felt solid, unyielding, grounding her to this moment. Every moment of silence she had endured for years, the fear and isolation, blurred into a whirlwind of resolve. "I do know. I can hear, and I can help him." A flicker of disbelief crossed the figure's face, perhaps a hint of confusion in the chaos. They paused, and in that fleeting moment, Jason caught her gaze, a silent plea in his eyes. "What do they want?" he breathed, fear threading through his question. "I don't know," she admitted, the confession heavy on her tongue. "But I'm not going to stand here and let them hurt you. Not again." The weight of her words seemed to thaw something in the air, a brief sparkle of hope amidst the unrelenting dread. She drew on everything she'd ever felt, the years spent trapped within silence, and forged it into a lifeline. She stepped closer, emboldened by the truth of her voice. The figure wavered, hesitating as if reassessing their intention. Stay back. I won't hesitate to use this. They brandished the knife, glinting wickedly under the streetlight. Then came the eruption. From behind her, a crash of metal trash can tipped over, reverberating through the thick silence. A frantic dog dashed past, barking wildly, breaking the trance and sending people into frantic motion. Gasps flared around them as chaos reignited, and the figure turned, momentarily distracted. Now! Sarah shouted. A primal scream rose within her, propelling herself forward, heart pounding with the belief that she could save the boy. In that blinding instant, Jason's hand slipped into her own, fierce and steady. Together! He yelled, moving side by side with her, but just as they closed in on the boy, the figure spun back, eyes wild with fury. You're making a mistake, they screamed, stepping between Sarah and the child, determination etching lines into their face. What lay ahead was a collision of choices: fear or resolve, chaos or clarity. As Sarah's breath quickened, the shadows deepened, drawing closer, threatening to engulf them all. What would the figure reveal, and which truth would ultimately triumph as the storm crashed horrifically over them? Chaos swirled around them, a living entity of fear and desperation. The figure stood firm, knife poised like a harbinger of doom. Sarah's heart thundered in her ears, drowning out the frantic murmurs of the crowd. Faces shifted, expressions morphed from shock to horror as they sensed the impending violence. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted, her voice breaking the weighty silence. Hope sparked that maybe, just maybe, she could reach the figure hiding behind layers of rage. "You don't have to hurt him." The figure snarled, anger coiling around each word like barbed wire. "You don't understand. They killed him. And I have to make them pay." Sarah felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath her. Who? Who are you talking about?" But the figure didn't answer, their eyes blazing with a flurry of emotions: grief, rage, desperation. She caught a glimpse of vulnerability amidst the madness, a fleeting chance. "Please, just put down the knife," she cried, desperation creeping into her tone. "We can talk about this." Jason's grip tightened around her hand, a silent reassurance that they were surrounded by people who cared. But Sarah knew that care could only go so far. Time was running out. "Get away from her!" Jason yelled, stepping in front of her, his body poised like a shield. The boy behind them remained dangerously still, which made Sarah's chest constrict tighter. She couldn't let Jason's bravery become a target for the figure's wrath. "Jason, move!" She gasped, but the command was caught in her throat. Rage ignited in the figure's eyes. Before she could utter another word, they lunged forward, knife glinting ominously under the flickering streetlights. "So, you choose death?" The figure screamed, their voice slicing through the chaos. But in that same heartbeat, Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her instincts igniting. She surged forward. It was a blur, a dance of desperation and adrenaline. She ducked beneath the wild arc of the knife, her body moving on instinct, a place where fear melted into raw action. In those brief seconds, she saw the pain etched into the figure's eyes, a kaleidoscope of agony and fury. "Stop. Please." Her words came out hoarse, layered with the weight of empathy forged in solitude. "I can help you too." She felt this universal connection split the air between them, only fear had twisted it into something monstrous. "Help?" The figure spat. "You don't know what hurt feels like." But she did. The years of silence had shaped her into a vessel of understanding, of pain and redemption. "I do. I can hear now," she shouted, voice steadier than she felt, hoping it would pierce through the fog of rage. A flash of confusion flickered over the figure's face. Their hands slackened around the knife, just for a moment. In that split second, Sarah closed the distance, hoping her outstretched hand might make contact with more than just flesh. "Let me in," she whispered, her voice softer now, appealing to their humanity. Behind her, Jason remained taut, a coiled spring ready to snap, yet Sarah felt the whisper of possibility brush against her. Perhaps she could bridge the gap between fury and hope. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the alleyway behind them. The crowd gasped collectively, heads snapping toward the noise. A shadow broke from the shadows, a figure darting into view. "Get down!" a voice shouted, and in an instant, the tension exploded. What now? Panic surged through Sarah as she turned back toward the figure in front of her. They stood rooted, torn between recognition and dread. "Who is that?" the figure rasped, eyes darting to the approaching sound. In the chaos that ensued, Sarah's heart raced. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about unlocking the truth hidden beneath layers of pain. Would they listen? Would they understand? As the new figure moved closer, an unmistakable truth hung in the air. Something darker lurked beyond the knife, unleashing untold ramifications on them all. What truths lay in wait, and how far was she willing to go to uncover them? The streetlights flickered wildly, casting strange shadows as the new figure emerged. A hood obscured their face, but Sarah could feel the electricity in the air shift. The once chaotic scene was now charged with an uncertain energy. "Get away from her!" Jason shouted again, but his voice trembled, betraying the rising fear that twisted in his gut. Sarah felt it too, a tight knot of dread that left little room for hope. "Who are you?" she called out, trying to gain control over the spiraling situation. But the answer came in a strangled sob, a sound that echoed off the walls like a death knell. The hooded stranger stepped into the light, revealing deep-set eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You don't understand," they cried, a tremor in their voice. "I'm here to finish what was started, to seek justice." This wasn't just chaos anymore. It was vengeance, sour and potent, a cocktail of raw emotion she knew too well. The figure in front of her was fighting a battle of their own. "Please," Sarah implored, her voice barely a whisper now. "You don't have to do this. Revenge will only lead to more pain." The knife turned back towards her, the blade shimmering in the dim light. "You think I want to? You think I want all this? I lost everything. They killed my brother." In that moment, a deep sadness washed over Sarah. She sensed the rage, the heartbreak pulsing through the figure like a toxic river. But beneath that, there was fear that gripped her heart. "Tell me his name," Sarah said softly, her words infused with compassion. "Let me help you remember him. Let us honor him in a way that doesn't drown us in blood." Something in the figure's eyes shifted again, but the hooded stranger hesitated, torn between the urge for justice and the essence of loss that bound them. They were trapped in a cycle, just like her, wrapped in grief that choked any light from entering their hearts. "Time's running out," Jason said, clearly shaken. "We can't just stand here." But Sarah couldn't move. She was caught, suspended in a moment, teetering on the edge of decision. Another sudden crash echoed from the alley, and the jolt snapped Sarah from her trance. She spun towards the sound, panic flaring, and saw a group advancing, shouting threats that resonated with urgency. "Run!" Jason yelled, pulling Sarah back to reality, but she didn't want to leave. "Not now." As if reading her mind, Jason's expression hardened. "There's no time. We have to help them." With a surge of adrenaline, she focused back on the figure trembling before her. "I'm here, and I won't let you go through this alone." But instead of a response, the knife-wielding figure locked eyes with her, a flicker of doubt dancing in their gaze as their breath quickened. "You think you can save me?" Suddenly, the crowd was surging towards them, their faces painted with fear and judgment. "Let them go!" someone shouted, but it was unclear who they were referencing. With every heartbeat, the walls seemed to close in. The threat of violence loomed large, but so did the chance for truth. This was the moment that could shift everything, and it hung in the air like the sharp tang of impending storm. Then, without warning, the figure hurled the knife towards the ground with a piercing clang, the metal embedding itself within the asphalt with a thud. All eyes turned to the fallen weapon, a collective gasp escaping the crowd. "What have you done?" they screamed, the question reverberating as tensions twisted tighter. I don't know," the figure whispered, sinking to their knees, breathing heavily as if the weight of the world had crashed down. Sarah stepped forward, hand outstretched, but a voice echoed from the shadows yet again, darker and menacing. So much for justice. The ground beneath them trembled as a new layer of chaos threatened to erupt, and in that moment, Sarah realized this was only the beginning. Who was truly orchestrating this madness? The quiet truth surged within her, demanding to be unveiled, or would they all be consumed by the turmoil that held them captive, bound by blood and revenge? The sudden stillness after the knife hit the ground was electric. Sarah's heart raced in a violent rhythm. The crowd's collective gasp echoed in her ears, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. She strained to hear the dulled whispers around her, the murmur of fear and disbelief, her world constricting around the hooded figure, now slumped in despair. Jason's hand tightened on her shoulder, but Sarah felt the pull of the unknown stronger than anything. "We can't leave them," she urged, stepping closer. The fear of losing this chance to connect choked her voice. "You felt it. The injustice, the pain. Stay back," shouted someone from the crowd, a glimmer of authority cutting through the gasps. "We don't know what they have in mind." Desperation rose in her chest like a tidal wave. "No. No one needs to get hurt. We can help each other." The hooded stranger looked up, their face shrouded in shadows but vulnerable, a mixture of rage and exhaustion. "Help," they echoed, the word falling heavily like lead. "I've done nothing but hurt. I was meant to." Suddenly, another figure emerged from the crowd, a stocky man with wild eyes that glinted in the remainders of streetlight brightness. "Get back. You don't understand what's happening here." "Shut up. You don't know a thing." The stranger spat, anger rushing back, electrifying the air between them. But Sarah saw the flicker of doubt in their eyes. She had to seize it. "Who was your brother?" she said, her voice a desperate plea. "What was his name? Tell us." They hesitated, the weight of the question weighing heavy on their shoulders. "Jace," came the pained whisper. A wave of revelation crashed over Sarah. "Jace." She felt as though she stepped onto the thin ice of a personal tragedy, one that rippled into the lives of others. "I'm so sorry for your loss." The mention of the name seemed to peel away layers of rage, but the crowd continued to shift uneasily. Some were shouting warnings, others urging caution. Tension was fraying dangerously. The stocky man raised his voice again. "This isn't the time for sentiment. They killed his brother, and he stop." Jason shouted, stepping defensively in front of Sarah. "If you keep agitating them, this will end in bloodshed. Maybe that's what they want." Someone piped up, the tension snapping back in the crowd's direction, looking for a scapegoat. Fingers pointed at the figure on their knees. Sarah could feel the dangerous air thickening, lurking with unvoiced threats. "Jace meant something to this person," Sarah said firmly, heart pounding. "He was a person. Not a victim." The hooded figure's breath trembled, caught between the boiling rage and haunting loss. "You think I can just let this go?" they cried, desperation twisting around every word. "You're naive. They deserve every ounce of what they took from us." "I'm not saying that," Sarah rushed to say. "But this doesn't have to be the end. Think of how Jace would want you to remember him, not through violence, but through standing up against what was wrong together." Jason nodded, his eyes pleading. "Please. There's a better route than this. We can fight back in a way that matters." Sarah held her breath, waiting for the grace of recognition to wash over that haunted face. But, before that moment could crystallize, the stocky man lunged forward. "Enough. I'm not going to let you corrupt him further." The crowd erupted, voices rising in a chorus of panic. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out everything else. "No," she shouted, grasping her feelings like a lifeline. Just then, a crack echoed through the alley right behind her. The rubbery sound prickled her skin, and her instincts screamed. Unbeknownst to them all, another threat lurked just beyond the threshold. "Everyone, run!" Sarah yelled, her voice piercing the panic as the shadows shifted once more. But who would be saved, and at what cost? The answer hung perilously above them like an unkind mist, waiting to reveal the next horrifying twist. The moment Sarah shouted, the crowd scattered like a disturbed swarm of bees. Faces painted with fear darted in every direction, the night thick with dread and uncertainty. Jason's grip on her tightened as they both stumbled backward, trying to escape whatever had just entered their confined world. "Stay close," he urged, pulling her toward a narrow alleyway. The voices of the crowd began to fade, swallowed by the echoing darkness. Sarah's heart raced, each beat resonating in her ears like a loud drum. "And no. We can't leave," she insisted, glancing back at the hooded figure who remained on the ground, now teetering between despair and rage. She felt a cruel twist in her stomach. They needed help, not abandonment. "I'm not leaving them," she said firmly, determination fueling her next move. Jason hesitated, anxiety flickering in his eyes, but he knew arguing wouldn't change her mind. Taking a deep breath, he led her back through the chaos, weaving past scared onlookers, but they weren't fast enough. A chilling growl surged from behind them. Sarah turned, her breath hitching in her throat. Another figure emerged, a menacing silhouette slicing through the low light. The line of their jaw was tight, eyes glimmering with a dangerous intent that sent shivers down her spine. "Don't turn your back," Jason called, his voice edged with panic. "We need to keep moving." "Let us help," Sarah started, her voice breaking as another sound ripped through the silence. A metal object clattered to the ground, shinier than the dull grays that surrounded them. It was another knife, its tip glinting cruelly as it rolled toward her boots. The approaching figure, their features now clearer in the dim light, had a wild look, hair matted, clothes torn, but the fire in their eyes froze her in place. It was not just a stranger, it was someone hardened by the same grief that was now marring her own spirit. "You think you can help?" The figure spat, voice dripping with malice. Suddenly, a howl pierced the night, a shout of rage combined with pain. It beckoned forth the shadows that loomed around them, as if the darkness itself craved retribution. The hooded figure was rising now, fueled by something primal, a need for vengeance that slithered through the air like smoke. "Stay behind me," Jason yelled, moving to shield Sarah, resolute even in the whirlpool of danger. He faced the alien threat, unwavering. But Sarah felt torn, a rift inside her tugging at her core. "I have to try," she whispered, pushing against Jason's protective arm. "They need someone to believe." The crowd's frantic murmurs reached her ears again, fragments of conversations blending into a cacophony of fear and chaos. A few faces were familiar, lost friends and neighbors, people she cared for. Their lives were intertwined with the stranger before her. Couldn't she find a way to bridge that divide? "Wait," Sarah called out, raising her hands. "Please. I know you're hurting. We can work together. We don't have to do this." The hooded figure hesitated again, the mask partially slipping as the light caught their features. A look of conflict flickered across their face. But before she could draw them in, the stocky man from the crowd dashed back toward them, eyes frantic, hand raised like a weapon. "You don't understand. This is all part of their plan." An invisible thread pulled tighter around them. A roar thundered through the alley, drowning out all reason. Sarah felt the hairs on her arms stand on end. She could sense something dark and powerful creeping closer, the night growing colder with every waning heartbeat. "Get out of here," Jason shouted, shoving her away. "Now." "No," Sarah cried, panic rising like bile. She couldn't abandon them now, not when hope was just a breath away. It all hinged on this moment. As chaos erupted around them, time slowed unnaturally. Their fates intertwined, hearts racing, they stood on the knife's edge of choice. What was about to unfold would either shatter them or bind them in a way they could never escape, and just as the tension reached a breaking point, a thunderous crash echoed, deep and resonant, collapsing into the night. "Run, if you want to live." A voice boomed from the distance, sending tremors through the already shaken ground. Was it a warning or merely the beginning of something even worse? The unraveling had begun, and the question lingered dreadfully in the air: who would survive when the shadows finally closed in? In the midst of chaos, Sarah's world narrowed down to the rasping breath of the hooded figure and the thunderous crash that still reverberated in the air. Everything felt surreal, like a fevered dream she couldn't wake from. She looked at the figure, eyes wild with desperation. Could she reach them? Could they find a way to unite instead of destroy? Please listen to me. She pleaded, inching closer despite Jason's unwavering grip. The sharp edge of fear cut deep within her, yet somewhere inside, a glimmer of hope flickered. I don't want to fight, she said, her voice trembling, louder than she had intended, resonating into the dim alley. We don't have to become more victims. The hooded figure's posture shifted, wavering between aggression and a flicker of understanding. They promise power. They shouted back, voice raw. But you don't know what's at stake. They'll take everything from you. Behind her, Jason let out an exasperated breath, frustration boiling over as more shadows coiled around them. Sarah, you need to listen. He insisted, eyes darting nervously toward the encroaching darkness. This isn't the time for speeches. But she could see at the struggle within the figure's posture, the way they clenched their fists. You've lost someone, Sarah said softly, inching just a little closer. We're all suffering. But fighting won't bring them back. The figure froze, shock rippling through the air like a stone thrown into water. Maybe it was the mention of loss that hit home, or maybe they were just tired of the endless cycle of hurt. But for a breath, it seemed she had pierced through the veil of madness. Then came the crack of a brick underfoot, a jarring reminder that they were not alone. A group of masked individuals emerged from the shadows, their faces obscured but their intentions palpable. Their presence brought with it a wave of uneasiness, and the hooded figure snapped back, defenses raised. Get away. You don't understand. Sarah's heart sank at the sight. This was a gathering storm, a powder keg ready to ignite. The air was thick with tension, every muscle coiled tight. She felt Jason's protective instinct surge, and for a moment, panic washed over her again. Don't let them get to you. One of the newcomers shouted, a sharp edge to their voice. Fight back. They need to feel the pain they've caused. No. Sarah screamed, feeling the weight of her own words crashing back at her, the pull between survival and compassion warring fiercely in her heart. Stop. This isn't the answer. But it was already too late. The masked figures surged forward, their intentions dark. A flash of metal caught Sarah's eye, a knife, gleaming under the paltry moonlight. Jason flinched, instinctively placing himself in front of Sarah, ready to protect her at all costs. The chaos erupted like a storm, shouts mingling with cries of fear and rage. Bodies moved in a frenzy, colliding into one another, every face a mask of desperation. Sarah! Jason shouted, voice barely breaking through the turmoil. We need to go now. But she couldn't move. Her feet felt heavy, rooted to the ground by the weight of her choice. Then, as if summoned by her indecision, the hooded figure shot forward, catching a masked individual off guard. In an instant, a wild brawl erupted, every punch, every scream pierced through the night. Sarah's heart raced like a wild drum, watching chaos unfold before her. She felt paralyzed, caught between the urge to run and the instinct to help. Then it struck her, this was the moment she had been bracing for, the moment when it was not about her anymore. Jason, we have to help. Sarah cried, ready to leap forward despite the whirlpool of danger surrounding them, but just as she found her courage, the ground shook again, an unnatural vibration, like the roar of something ancient, rising from the depths of the darkness. It silenced the battle, freezing every combatant in place. What's happening? Someone murmured, eyes wide with terror. As hope faded and dread clawed its way back into her throat, Sarah felt a deep dread ripple through her. Just as the shadows had seemed to gather momentum, a new threat was rising. And as a monstrous figure loomed into view, the darkness was no longer an ally. It had become a deep, sentient threat. Is this how it ends? Sarah thought, heart hammering as the synchronization of calamity breathed down her neck. Would anyone leave this chaos alive? Then, from beyond the figure's massive shadow, a voice whispered in the darkness, ominous and echoing a reminder of everything they had feared. Your choices will determine who falls and who survives. And in that moment, she understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The choice was not only between life and death but between losing themselves to hatred or finding strength in unity. Would she find the strength to fight back, or would they all be consumed by the very darkness they tried to tame? Everything moved in slow motion. The ground trembled beneath their feet, a heavy heartbeat of impending doom. Sarah's eyes were fixed on the giant shadow, mighty and insatiable, looming over them, a manifestation of all their fears and frustrations. But in that moment of dread, she felt a surge of determination ignite within her core. "Everyone, listen!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the fog of panic. "We can't let this darkness take over. We've all suffered, but fighting each other isn't the answer." For a heartbeat, the crowd froze. The chaos paused, the raging emotions suspended in time, as if taking a moment to digest her words. Jason met her gaze, eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and admiration. He wasn't there to shield her anymore, he was standing with her. The glimmer of recognition flickered in the hooded figure's expression. The stirring of confusion, vulnerability, and lingering rage danced around them like ghosts, but it couldn't continue this way. "I get it. You're angry. You're hurt. So am I. But we can't let vengeance consume us." The fire in the figure's eyes flickered, just for a moment. It was not just them facing a monster, it was a collective struggle against all they had lost. Sarah saw it all now. The faces behind the masks from the crowd were mirrors of her own heartache. They were all victims of the same tragedy. "Jace deserves to be remembered, not avenged," she cried, trying to reach the raw truth buried deep in their grief. The figure hesitated, hand wavering over that knife. The shadows shifted like restless spirits behind them, but Sarah took a bold step forward, embodying all the hope she had fought to reclaim. "Let us make this right together," she pleaded, voice steady, unwavering. "Let us honor those we've lost by standing together against this darkness." Something flickered beneath the broken pain in the figure's resolve. A breath later, the weight of their weapon dropped to the ground, the clang of the knife a deafening echo amidst the quiet gasp of the crowd. I just wanted to make them pay," they whispered, shaken. "All of us do," someone from the crowd called out, and nods of agreement rippled through people holding tightly to their fears. "But revenge won't heal us. It will tear us apart." As if every word was a key, unlocking a door that had long been shut, a murmur of understanding ran through the throng. Suddenly, the clouds above rolled dark and menacing as the figure's monstrous silhouette gave way to the palpable threat chasing after them. "We don't have time," Jason yelled, urgency surging through him. "We need to regroup and fight back." Sarah nodded, heart racing but fueled by a newfound fierce clarity. "We unite. Together, we're stronger." She turned to the hooded figure, who now seemed like a fellow wanderer, not an enemy. "We've all lost someone. Let their memories guide us into the battle ahead, not revenge." In a moment that felt sacred, the hooded figure lifted their face, revealing tears shimmering on their cheeks, a bridge created from shared pain. "Let us honor Jace the right way," they said softly, determination lacing their voice as they stepped closer to join her side. Jason gave her a look, raw with astonishment. "You did it, Sarah." "Not yet," she whispered fiercely. "We need to prepare for what's coming." The darkness approached, an almost tangible presence waiting to engulf them, but within the reluctant allies, rage faded into purpose, cobbled together by grief but bound by hope. They would not be the broken pieces of revenge, lost in the shadows. They would be the light reaching through the cracks, determined to connect the unbroken paths of those who desired peace. As they began to make a stand, a newfound energy surged through them all. The hissing whispers of revenge ignited into collective resolve. The overwhelming sense of fear diluted as they banded together, hearts pounding as one. Sarah breathed in the courage swirling around her. She stood tall, ready to embrace the chaos but also ready to meet it with a united front. The sound of footsteps, resolute and strong, resonated around her, a heartbeat for their newfound alliance. As the figures of darkness charged forward, they would meet them not as individuals tangled in resentment but as a community ready to reclaim the light. "Together!" they shouted. And just like that, what began as desperation transformed into the first flickers of hope amidst the growing storm. Facing the shadows, Sarah felt the weight of the truth they had all endured to transform loss into the strength that would finally set them free. In that moment, they became something greater. They became a force forged in unity. Their fears wouldn't define them any longer. They had each other, and together, they could finally fight back. So as the turmoil erupted one last time, together they surged into battle. In the distant echo of their clash, a truth lingered, a reminder that even in darkness, light could be reclaimed, shoulders could be strengthened, and futures could be united in harmony. This is it. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is crucial. Let us show the world our strength together.